Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Forever Bristol City podcast. Today, I'm joined by the legend that is Dave Febbs. Now, as you can see, David is not hosting today. That is because he feels the pod should align with the football club and prioritise home matches. For away ones, we just have to make the best of it. So, let's begin. Febbs, what was your first thought? What was your final thoughts at full time?
I guess I was delighted that we came away with a point, because for 65, 70 minutes we were pretty awful, weren't we? And we kind of resurrected a point from a spirited final 20, 25 minutes. But yeah, it was it was quite a low quality game overall as well. But we certainly played our part in making it low quality for that first 65, 70 minutes.
Did you take any positives away at the end? What was your final feeling at the end of the game itself?
I think result is the main one. I think it was good to see a couple of players probably who've been a little bit around the fringes, like Bell and Earthy, come on and have an impact. So those were the kind of positives for me, really. But there weren't a lot.
No, it was a difficult game. Oh, thank you for joining us, Mr. Potier. So, what were your thoughts at full time?
What my thoughts at full time were, thank goodness is that over, and I can switch the TV on and catch up on Coronation Street. And but no, overall it was awful. It was as bad could be for the opening hour, and then the last 20 minutes we did put in a performance. I think a lot of that was due to the fact that Danny Roll, for some reason, just pulled Sheffield Wednesday back, and they invited us to attack them. And we talk about substitutions, but when we were on top, I thought it was needless, the substitutions in extra time, when if anybody was going to score, it was going to be us. And Sam showed a bit more composure when presented with that shot, that he did get the shot away, hit the frame. We would have got 3 points, and you just said that would have been a bit of a robbery, really. But two poor sides, typical average mid-table game.
Well, as you're here, David, you can now.
All right, then, Dave. Yeah, no, you've done a great. What were your thoughts on the final whistle, Dave?
I thought it was a very, very, very odd game, to be honest with you. If you'd have asked me at the hour mark, I was very, very annoyed. What we saw afterwards was almost a professional pride response. It was like the players just said, enough of this, no more, this can't stand. It was helped by the fact that you was no longer so outrageously out of position. But then at the end, it was almost a feeling of frustration, because we got the equaliser. And I'm not saying that we should get the winner, but we didn't even seem to try and go for the kill. It was almost like, right, we've got a goal, let's back off a little bit now. And let's think about this. No, put the foot down and go harder. So it was frustration, but it was good to see a bit of a response in the second half.
Yeah, no. Dave, what did you think of the starting lineup? I mean, he made a couple of I guess the key one was dropping Roberts. What did you think of the starting lineup when you saw that?
A bit surprised. Me, I kind of stay consistent that I never kind of criticise a team before it goes out there. I think we've got a squad of fairly likability players, so it shouldn't really matter which 11 we pick. It's all about them, going out on the pitch and performing. So I rarely criticise a team before the game, but I would say if I'm there as an opposition manager looking at it and I see Hirakawa starting, I'm thinking we're just going to bully him, aren't we? And for me, it was the wrong game to play Hirakawa. Because he's just not physical enough, and he just runs around on the periphery of things, and you can tell the championship in that type of match is just beyond him, I'm afraid. So that was the first thing that I worried about, was whether he'd be able to have an impact. I think we can see afterwards that he had zero impact on the game. The one thing I was pleased about around the wing-back situation was that he didn't play Mark Sykes left wing-back, because that was how it was kind of listed on the team sheet. And I thought, Mark Sykes doesn't really tend to perform at wing-back. And at left wing-back, he hates playing there. He's even admitted it himself. So the fact that he did play McCrory there and played Sykes on the right side was one positive from that selection. Of course, he's left out Mehmeti as well, who's
Well, bizarre. And
Did
just
he need
picking
a
up on
rest?
that.
I don't know. He didn't look like he needed a rest when he came off the bench. But yeah,
Yeah.
so kind of bit mixed reaction to the.
I'm
start
picking
of
up. I mean, he's playing a £2 million. I know he scored last night. A £2 million right-footed player on the left, Dave. When you have got a youngster that you could play there, and it's his sort of natural position, you know, and it just shows a lack of confidence in Morrison, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, there was a few rumours going out before the game that he's been ill. I don't know whether that was kind of put out there to, justify his non-selection. You know, he played some minutes in the under-21s. He might have been in it the weekend or whatever. But yeah, I think, you know, we need to stop looking at did he play in one game or, you know, the last two games and say where's he been over a period of time. You know, if we, I'll get slated for this, but you know, I'll go with it. It's one part of the numerous things that shows the pathway is not what it was, and we're paying a bit of lip service to it, in my opinion.
Dave, what did you think of the lineup? No Falle on the bench again. I mean, we talk about rumours of him being on his way early doors, but what did you think?
You know, it's tandems and partnerships. If you're putting McCrory as left wing back to be able to do a job with you, who you're hoping can do a job, and you've got Sykes, who isn't a natural wing back to do a job, all of a sudden you've got three players in the side that can do a job, and then it might look like it can work on paper, but you transfer that to an actual football pitch and it was disjointed. It affected half the side. We offered very, very little or next to nothing in the first half. And it then seeped into the attitude. And I'll give you an example. We can see that the pitch wasn't the best, right? And some players didn't seem to struggle and some did. We got a free kick in a reasonably dangerous position in the first 10 minutes of the game. We played it short and just carried on like it was nothing. You're away from home. Instead of setting your statement and putting your big men up, we just go, no, we're just going to pass it around. We're going to play our football. But without the team to do so, it lacked coordination. And I felt really, really sorry for you because I agree with everything that Fev says. But it's like, when do we actually see him in his best position? We don't. And we saw him for a couple of games at the start where he was lively. But right now, you could not sign him on a permanent deal because he doesn't show anything. No. And Mehmeti not starting, it was the wrong decision, in my opinion, and it showed.
Dave, come in there.
Chip in there. I just realised we're all Daves, aren't we, this morning?
Yeah. I'll be Turtle.
Triple Dave. Triple Dave.
I think you make a really good point about kind of like the free kicks and things like that. There's almost a bit of kind of like arrogance, probably in the right word, but that we can just play the way we want to play all the time. And I think you go to somewhere like Hillsborough on a night game. One thing you want to do is quieten the crowd down in there. And you're absolutely right. You get free kick around the halfway line or wherever. You put it in the box. You put them under a bit of pressure. You make them backpedal. And you know, same when you're playing out defence. You turn them round and you squeeze up behind them. And we didn't do either of those things. We might have played long, but we didn't squeeze the pitch behind it. You know, it's for me it was a pretty poor game plan or execution of game plan last night. And you know, we'll probably talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But I just want to come.
Yeah, no. Let's get into the action. I mean, Bannon, he's a scourge of City, isn't he? He always seems to play well. They had a free kick early on, which I think found Windass, but nothing came of it. I wrote down the comment of one of the commentators after 6 minutes, and somebody put that on OTIB as well. He said Bristol City's ball retention is dreadful. He actually used that word, dreadful. But you know that it was what it was. Talking about free kicks, Dave, Twine, he had that free kick on 10 minutes. It was 30 yards out, prime Twine territory. Let's talk about Scott Twine. I got pelters the other week because I said all he's good for is free kicks, but he's shoved that right down my throat with some decent performances. But at Coventry and last night, he didn't affect the game and he got booked for petulant. What did you think of Twine last night, Dave?
To be honest, I probably kind of bucked the trend there. I actually thought he was one of the people in the first half who actually put himself about and put some effort in. Didn't always come off for him. And I think what we saw over the course of the game was him becoming more and more frustrated by the referee's performance, and he let it affect his performance, you know. And you know, most people who've follow me on Twitter know that I kind of have a shit list of referees, and James Linnington is
He's right up there.
firmly in the bottom three of it. And I made a bit of a joke post last night. He's been in the bottom three for 4 years now. He needs to be relegated. But Twine, in some respects, he's probably fortunate not to pick up a second yellow for petulance, really, and that was the danger. But I thought first half especially, I thought he tried to contribute, and there weren't many that I thought were putting themselves about, and I thought he tried to. So slightly different.
Did you agree with that, Dave? He did. He had that free kick, which it got blocked, but 10 minutes after that, and we're goal down by then. We come to the goal next, but overall, is he a luxury player?
I mean, we talk about the free kick. I think it's important to remember that he was the guy that won the free kick.
Yes.
He picked out the pocket and actually drove at their defence. And one of the issues that he had to buy it was that there was nothing in front of him in that moment. And there was a few moments where he was fighting for the ball. He was picking it up and then he giving it off. But I don't think the issue yesterday lay at Twine. It's around him. And I've spoken with Fevs before. I think that he can make players better, but he needs the right players around to be able to do that. And yesterday wasn't it, because he's not I'm going to grab this game and control it. If you give him options, he can play with those options. And yesterday, he just didn't have that at all.
Mm-hmm. Dave, the goal, degree of inevitability about it. Take us through it, how you saw it. It was, they won possession on the halfway line. Was it Bannon who released it to Windass? And take us forward from there.
I can't remember. It's so difficult for me to take you through it live, because at the moment where Scott Twine attempts the ball down the side to Sykes, well, I think we won it back on the halfway line. I think McCrory managed to intercept, and it came inside to Twine. So I'm going to sound like I'm doing a Mark Tubby here. But as the ball got played down the side to Sykes and it got cut out, my skybox decided to freeze. And I heard a couple of other people say they missed the goal. So I don't know if something happened on Sky at that point. Anyway, I quickly scrabbled from my iPad, fired up the Sky Sports app. As the game started, I see Windass breaking from the kind of halfway line into space, and he fed it out to
Valerie.
Valerie. Yeah, thanks for that. And he poured a ball back to Gassama, and ended up in the back of the net. I think there was some pretty poor passing on and marking from Jason Knight in that, but I did manage to watch it back afterwards, and we lost a 50-50 just after, didn't we? I think Twine dangled a leg in and the ball broke, and that was the point where kind of Windass broke on us. But it was a counter-attacking goal in it. I think you look at that, and I took some screenshots last night of when that happened, and it's kind of smacks of the term rest defence, which is, what do we do in our defence out of possession, or as the other team had gained it back and we were all over the shop, and that wasn't the only occasion we were like that. Yeah. Dave, the other day he was pointing the finger, not a massive finger, at Knight. A few people said Knight, he didn't track the runner. How did you see that opening goal for the Owls?
I think Fev's used a good expression, break with pace. It shows what you do when you break with pace. You make the defence on their heels, you make them back off, and you create space. Sure, you can argue, and I think in the second goal, Knight was more susceptible for committing too early, too quickly. But in that particular case, you've got runners coming from everywhere. You're trying to get back after looking forward. I think it's a good goal. It's what happens when you break with space, because you create it. It goes out wide, it comes in, a runner coming in from the edge of the box. We know those are the most dangerous types of goals, and we don't do that enough. But in my opinion, it was actually a very good goal. That it's difficult to blame anyone, because sometimes teams do things well. And it's okay.
It was well executed. I mean, I'm not saying I applauded it, but I thought, well, that's a decent goal, and as you say, if you want to pick holes in individual players, but it was swift. It showed the power of direct running. It looked at that point for a moment, I thought that they were really going to tear into us. And about 5 minutes after the goal scorer, Gassama, he set up Bannon, who had again too much space on the edge of the box, Dave, wasn't it? We were just really being submissive at that point. And Gassama went past 4 players on one occasion a few minutes after that, before laying the ball. That was awful that he had that time to do it. Everybody was saying, after you.
Yeah, looking a bit ominous at that point, wasn't it? We had no control of the game. Every time we got the ball, we gave it back to them within 2 or 3 passes, and the game became, pretty stretched. And we just couldn't, because it became stretched. We ended up, with Wells 60 yards away from our back line, and then you had Knight and Bird in the middle of the park trying to do shuttle runs to try and join up with Knight, Hirakawa and Twine, and then having to run 40 yards back to try and support the defence. I think that was my main kind of call out from that first half, from a kind of tactical point of view, was that we allow a game to get stretched. One of my biggest bugbears in football, if you're struggling, certainly on a pitch like that where you want to be able to get tight to people to force pressure off their first touch, you've got to be more condensed, and you've got to be brave. You've got to be brave to play a higher line, and we weren't. And I think the other thing that we saw there was we play a two in central midfield, Knight and Bird. But what we did last night, this probably won't come across to you listening on the pod, those that you can't see the screen, but we effectively played Knight ahead of Bird in almost like a straight line. So rather than being in a horizontal line across the pitch and screening your centre backs, you ended up with Bird playing as like a one defensive midfield, and then Knight just doing shuttle runs between Wells and the midfield all the time. And it just meant that there were huge gaps down the side. So they had really easy outballs to go into Ugbo or into Gassama or into, and if the ball didn't stick, then you had Windass nipping in and picking things out. And I think what Manning's tried to do there, and it'd be lovely if he did come out and explain it, was he's either never watched Sheffield Wednesday before, or he thinks Barry Bannon's the big threat, and we know he is, and he's asked Knight to go and play. And we almost tried to press in a bit of a diamond last night. So we had Wells at the top of the diamond, kind of pressing the centre backs of the keeper. We then had Hirakawa and Twine trying to pick out the side centre backs and split the wing backs, which they didn't do anywhere near effectively. And then you had Knight at the kind of base of the diamond trying to pick up Barry Bannon. And if you kind of vision that on a football pitch and then put Bird 30 yards behind him trying to screen the centre back, you can see basically gaps all the way down the outside, either side of Knight. And that's what Sheffield Wednesday exploited. They just, if we can't pass it to Barry Bannon, we'll go a bit longer. We'll pick up the pieces from there. And Jason Knight will flog his ass off trying to run 40, 50 yards every time to try and get back. And Knight looked absolutely knackered at the start of the second half. I don't think he had a good game. And I'm sure some of it was because he was knackered. But that for me was like the big tactical thing of the first half that I picked out, is that.
So again,
was all over
Manning getting the tactics wrong.
That's the issue right there, because if you look at Sheffield Wednesday, like going forward, especially and defensively, to be honest, they look like a team where every single player knew their jobs, had done their jobs multiple times, and were set to play. And like you said, we tried to start one way, so they just said no problem. Their two wide forward players had a field day. It was like easy for them. What's his name? Sorry, I've forgotten. The one that scored.
Gassama.
Yeah, he was just having the time of his life on that pitch. He knew where he had to be. He knew the pockets, and he was like, "Thank you very much." And around about the 20-minute mark, Bannon had a tackle on you, a crunching tackle, and it was like a microcosm of the issue as a whole. You're asking Bannon, who it's his dance floor. He knows that place. He knows what to do against a player like you that isn't comfortable there. Smash! Welcome to the championship. And it just summed up that first half for me. And we weren't on it at all. And it comes to set up in a way that you just so eloquently described.
Yeah. Anyway, we go in at half time, 1-0 down, and just not playing well. But we get a lifeline at the start of the second half, 51 minutes. Dave, hopefully your skybox didn't pack in, but it was Dickey. He didn't have the greatest of games last night, I didn't think, at the back, but it's him who puts Sykes away with a decent ball. We want to see more of that, don't we?
Yeah. Just before we go on, for those people that are actually watching the recording, that was kind of one of my screenshots that you can see. There's a long ball being played out, and you can see Jason Knight just entering whichever side of the screen it is. I can't work out whether it's left or right, depending on which way.
Yeah.
And the kind of straight line between him and Bird. And that was what I saw several times in the first half. So there you go. Just what I bring a bit of visual to
That's good. No, we did a visual the other day, Dave, actually. So it's like, for those of you watching in black and white, the green is behind the red. Yeah. But we are getting more people. We do get more people, since we're talking about how you watch this or listen to this podcast. We actually get more people watching us than listening to us on podcast now, which is good, I suppose, to a point. But back to the goal, Dave. Back to the goal. I mean, it was
once again, it was a really, really simple goal, wasn't it? It was Dickie just bringing the ball out of defence a bit and pinging out a really good ball to Sykes. I don't think he took a touch, did he? Did he just literally run onto it into his path and then clipped a good ball? Actually, kind of sat up a little bit, and he actually made a really good quality cross off of that, because it'd have been quite easy to shank it. And it was great last night because someone put up a video of the goal against Preston where he did exactly the same, and it was like for like the same goal. But yeah, brilliant cross from Sykes. You know, Naki Wells, you know, he ain't going to miss that, is he? And it was a bullet header that gave Beadle absolutely no chance. Yeah, it was good. You know, good simple counter-attacking goal. Showed by what you can do if you actually pass the ball
forward
direct rather than just boot it direct.
Yeah. Dave, Naki, good to see you. He looked really pleased when he scored that. You see his face on the camera. What a pro he's been, you know, and another experienced pro that, in line with what appears to be company club policy, probably be on his way in the summer, because we can't have experienced pros who've been in the game a long time and know what they're about. But would we have been annoyed if we'd have conceded that one defensively? Because it was as clinical as their goal, really, wasn't it? And sometimes you just can't stop them.
You know, sometimes football's really, really easy, for as complicated as we make it. And sure, you might be able to argue that Sykes had a bit too much space, but it comes with the delivery of the pass. It is a beautifully weighted pass and well angled from Dickie. So I don't think he does touch it. It is a first-time cross, and Sykes is really, really good at those little nippy crosses that just go over everybody, but at pace. And sometimes, again, it's a good goal. You know, you could argue with certain technical things of a setup, but football's revolving all the time, and you have to take advantages of those moments. And they really, really did it in that spot. At that point, I don't think it was deserved at all. No. But you have to be clinical, and we created something, goal.
Yeah, and I'll stick with you, Dave T, and then come to you, Dave Febbs. But you know, we're back in this undeservedly, but Jesus, you know, Chris Honor used that term on Robin's TV last night, I was told. I don't know in what context, because he certainly wasn't on the pitch. Jesus, that is. He's playing for Arsenal, probably. We're behind again, less than 90 seconds after the goal, Dave. And Twine, I think, appealing for a foul or flat on his ass. Take us through the goal, because, you know, Knight didn't close his man down. You know.
Well, the first thing, I think it's on McCory, and it's definitely a foul. There's no doubt that it's a foul. It doesn't get anywhere near the ball. It's almost ridiculous. It's like, come on, it's not even a close one. But from there, you've got opportunities to stop it. It gets played out wide. It's then cut back. The issue is that Knight commits himself too quickly. He's got himself in position, and he jumps in, and the guy goes, "Thank you very much," and around. And initially, it looks like a deflection, but I think it's going in the other corner anyway. I don't think the deflection actually makes a difference. I think it's in that corner or that corner. But it's true, I haven't seen it from the right angle to be sure. But the issue comes from Knight overcommitting. And that, in a way, plays into what Fev said before. You're so exhausted from going up, down, up, down, up, down, trying to get yourself everywhere, that you lose your clarity and you do something that perhaps you shouldn't.
Mm-hmm. And do you think we should be more solid, having got back in the game? You know, do you think we were, you know, not lack of concentration? I know there was a foul in the build-up, as you alluded to a second ago.
Up until that point, we weren't even solid at all at any moment, because They just had too much space on the pitch, and it was almost just like they conceded and they just said, "Okay, we'll go again." It was an odd thing, because it was like, really, but it wasn't a surprise. For me, it was not a shock to see them go up the other end and score, because it was that kind of game where we hadn't deserved to score. Sheffield Wednesday get another chance, and it was the same kind of thing as the first goal: player out wide, cutting it back. You know, we don't really do that enough. We don't create enough crosses. It's almost like we want to score in a certain way. And to bring it a little bit forward, which you'll come to later, when we did start crossing yesterday, we had our smallest striker on the pitch. And it's that confused thinking all over the pitch in little moments.
Back to the manager, back to the coach, or whatever you want to call him. Dave, the second goal that put them back in front, not great when you concede so soon after giving yourself a chance, but self-inflicted to some extent.
Yeah, I think Dave's described the goal, really well. There's not a lot I can add to that, but I think just picking up on his point there that it was almost like, bloody hell, Bristol City have had the audacity to equalise. We'll just go and put ourselves 2-1 back up again, and that's how it felt. I think this wasn't a I've seen a few people saying, oh, we were much better second half. We weren't much better until 65, 70 minutes. That period after half time when we scored against the run of play. It was still a pretty broken game at that point. And they just thought, well, they've got an equaliser, we'll just go back up there and we'll go 2-1 up. And that was how it felt, really. It was like, actually, when they want to score, they will do. If we put them under any pressure, they'll put us to bed. And ultimately they didn't. But that was how it felt at that point.
A better side than them would have smashed us last night, I think.
Yeah. They're a team that play their way. They're all about physicality, aggression, athleticism. They want to play a high paced game, and especially at Hillsborough, they're not going to allow opponents to settle. And I think it was surprising how the game turned around in that last 20-25 minutes.
Well, the hour marks come in, and we're all there playing Manning bingo lottery for when the substitutions got made. It was on 62 minutes. Dave, Bell, Earthy, Mehmeti coming on for Wells, Twine, and you. I mean, it is effectively like for like, isn't it? Striker for striker, creative midfield or creative number 10, and wide player. Yeah, the right substitutions, the right timing. Dave, T.
I guess in some respects, yes. I think if we just ignore the timing of them, I guess it's been done to death, and you've definitely got a feel for doing them around that mark. But Hirakawa wasn't playing very well. Well, he was way off the pace. Twine was getting more and more frustrated. So those were two natural subs to make. And I think Wells probably was he's probably thinking about Saturday as well, and thinking crikey, this is the only guy who's going to lead the line up there, and so I'll get him off and I'll give Bell a go. And so right subs for me, because two of them were underperforming and one of them he's worried about his minutes. I think the slight surprise for me is not that's the wrong word. It's the inconsistency of his selections around Sam Bell. So he's come out and said in previous interviews that Sam Bell's done pretty well coming off the bench and playing as a 9. And then when he was asked on one of the media sessions a week or so ago about it by Dan Carter, he almost kind of like paused, because I think he's kind of thinking, I've got Armstrong and I've got Maulu, who I'm trying to justify the whole recruitment process for. So I can't go too strong on Sam Bell, because that'll just make my recruitment and my coaching of those players look bad. So hence people like Armstrong come on Saturday. Maulu started against Wolves, and Bell I think's been a bit unlucky, because I think he's generally done pretty well since he's come back from injury and come off the bench. And last night, I'm not saying he was brilliant, but he made a contribution to a team performance.
I mean, I think that's it, Dave. Made a contribution, but he for me, he's a good squad player. When we talked about, you haven't been on the pod for a few weeks, but I've said more than once that he's the sort of player that he's your go-to second string striker when you've got two proven front men, even though we only pay with one. Dave T, what did you think of that one? Or what did you think? The substitutions. Dave explained the rationale. The timing is predictable. What did you think?
With what I'm going to say, I'll admit and pretext it, Manning cannot win in this situation, okay? My frustration is that if you look at yesterday's subs, these subs make sense yesterday. But I could have made those subs in any particular game. Febs could have done it. You could have done it. The issue is not yesterday's subs, because they did improve the team. You needed to come off. It was a must come off. Bell for Wales, it was in that moment again, around the 60th minute, which it too often is, except for the last game. The problem is not yesterday's subs. The problem is that it's always freshen up plan A in every game. And occasionally you are going to get success with it, like yesterday. But there's never imagination about the subs. It's always that. And we do have good players, and sometimes the ones coming on will be effective. But there'll be another game where he'll do exactly the same, and we'll be talking about it's always the same. It's plan A, plan A. So I don't think there was anything
a placebo,
special
Dave, isn't it? Sorry. Really, it's a bit of a placebo, isn't it? Really,
yeah.
It's not the subs themselves. It's really down to some players coming on and playing a bit better than the ones they replace, rather than tactical geniality. Really.
No, exactly. Like if you said to me yesterday, "What 3 subs will you make?" If you can't change the formation, that's the 3 subs.
Well, but there's a point there, Dave. There's a point there, Dave. You can't change the formation. I mean, he's so rigid in his thinking all the time, isn't he? Because, Nahki Wells, he could have stayed. We're behind by the time the substitutes are being made. Nahki Wells, you could give him another 15 minutes up to 75 and bring Bell on. And, let's go for the game, because you both said we didn't really go for it. I think we were good in the last 20 minutes, partly because of the subs. Well, a combination of our subs. But Danny Roll, for some explicable reason, Sheffield just pulled right back and let us come on to them. Yeah, we had 60% possession last night. Yeah, and I've not seen us push forward like we did in those last 20 minutes. But there was no real change in formation, because if Nahki Wells is on the pitch when that ball that went to Bell, Wells is there, that's in the back of the net. Yeah, and that's the difference. Just to point this out, we haven't changed formation. We've got rid of Wells. We've put on Bell, who you wouldn't necessarily say is going to be a serious threat as a header of the ball in the box. We put crosses in the 72nd, the 74th, the 80th, the 81st, the 82nd, the 85th, the 85th, the 86th, the 89th, the 90th minute. What's happening here? For me, it's really confused thinking. And yes, one of those I gave was a corner. But when you're putting in those kind of crosses, it's like a goal is going to come from a cross. Please put a bigger body in there. As it so happened, we got a goal because McCrory was no longer being asked to do wing-back duties because they sat so far back. So he took a gamble and got himself in the box to be that body. But you cannot say to me that the plan was, right, guys, we're going to put Bell there and now we're going to flood the box with crosses. It doesn't make sense, even though it worked. It's like... And I think if they had, even if they'd have brought Armstrong on to get on the end of the crosses, you wouldn't, of Armstrong and Bell, even though they're physically very different, you'd still back Bell ahead of Armstrong based on what we've seen of Armstrong so far, to convert those chances. But would you? Because, you're talking crosses here, and how many times, I don't remember too many situations where we've had genuinely quality crosses coming into the box, into the middle, where you're thinking, be big, attack it. Because I was thinking to myself, and Chris Honor on Robin's TV was saying, put one of the defenders as a striker, get someone else bigger in the box, do something. And we'll come to the subs at the end of the game in a minute. But for me, that was a real lack of clarity of thinking, that you put Bell and you go for crosses. It doesn't make sense. But as you say, we got that goal. It was Sykes cross, Bernard missed kick, McNally flicked header, and there's McCrory. Dave, we get back to the game at 2-2. Do you agree with what I said a moment ago, that Sheffield did invite us on? They did seem to go back into their shell, and they offered no threat going forward after they took the lead, and that was only on 52 minutes.
Yes, I guess you're always going to get the question, did they sit back or did we push them back? And I can't answer that with any real surety. I was just going to go back and say, at half time, I think we probably expected some changes then, didn't we? The only change he did make a change. He swapped Hirakawa and Twine over. So he moved Twine to play left 10 and he played Hirakawa to do right 10. That was his kind of tactical masterstroke at half time. I think most of us were surprised at that. I think, once again, going into that period, Dave, where we start to get on the ascendancy, for me, one of the reasons is that we stopped playing Knight vertically in front of Bird, and we started playing him horizontal. And this, once again, because I'm on one this morning. This is the view. This is the view there for you watching on the telly. We can see there Bird and Knight playing horizontal from each other in a much better protective shape, but also that they can go and join up. We're a little bit more condensed there. And there's one more a few minutes later, actually, where we're in build-up phase. We've got them square of each other again there as well. And that was what I thought gave us a much better structure to pin Sheffield Wednesday back. So I'm not sure why we didn't play like that in the first half, but from 65, 70 minutes on, there was a definite change in our shape. Who that came from, I don't know, but it was definitely better than what it was for the opening 65 to 70 minutes. And that for me is really worrying. Dave, go on.
No, sorry, continue. Sorry.
No, I've got nothing more to add to that, really.
Oh, I was just going to, I thought you'd finish. My apologies. I was going to say, just to address something in the comments, Peter Thompson has put, we were sixth in the form table over the last 10 games and still 4 points behind the playoffs. We are talking like we are 4 points off the relegation. We've got some of the most miserable fans. Here's why I disagree with that. If we only talk about points, sure, we're 4 points off. We're all aware that we're 4 points off. The performances, though, you can't say the last two games have been that particularly good. And even the ones before, we were winning games. In some cases, they were against poor teams. But I would argue that this team right now is performing under par for the quality that we've got. I don't think that we are playing good, attractive football in any way. We are digging out results in some ways, which is a positive. But
which is a good thing if you're digging out results, yeah.
But after 70 minutes yesterday, after Coventry, if we talk about like, oh my God, we're 4 points off. Did anybody enjoy Coventry? Did anybody enjoy the first 70 minutes of yesterday? Because I didn't. I didn't think
that's what we're talking about. We're talking about individually. We came into this run of 3 games this week with some cautious optimism, I'd say, which basically said we've picked up 10 points from 4 games over the Christmas period. Is this the point that we truly kick on? And those who kind of read me on OTIP will know that I'm very much in the opinion that Manning is win one, lose one, draw one territory. And this was his first big opportunity.
And we failed. We failed
to break out that. And I think the other thing was we've gone to, the utopia formation of 3-4-2-1. That's the answer. And I think, once again, some cautious optimism in there that says, actually, let's see whether that system stands up to 3 better opponents on paper, admittedly, over the Saturday last night and this Saturday, and on the evidence of the first 2 of those 3 games, it doesn't. It's not saying it's rubbish, but it didn't stand the test.
No.
So Peter, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about we're talking about expectation levels here as well in terms of what are the targets for Manning this season, and what we're doing is we're evaluating whether he's hitting them or not. And you'd say at the moment he's just under par, I think. And that's
but in the eyes, if you're
it's not a million miles off.
We're not a million miles away.
But we're sorry, Dave. Let me just finish 2 seconds. We're trying to judge against what those expectations are and those targets are. We're not judging him on Nigel Pearson. We're not judging him on relegation. We're judging him on a target that says we're expecting to be in the top 10, in the mix for the playoffs, and we at best are on the fringes of that. And in recent weeks, because we've had a good run of results, we've managed to look like we're in the mix. Time will tell whether actually that's a true position and actually we're going to kick on from there, or actually it's just another false dawn. And that's what we're discussing today.
If we look at the squad as a whole, my question is, are we picking up points because of Manning or in spite of Manning? Because if you look at the case against, and if somebody wants to do the case for, that's even better. It's not in-game management. Beyond like for like, what do we really see? It's not an identity because we are flexibly inflexible. We will change bits before games, like you've identified with Knight, but in-game, we don't really do enough of it. It's certainly not an understanding of how football fans work and how you speak to them and get them on board, because some of his comments at best are misunderstood in what fans want to hear. So it's like, what does he bring that is going to elevate that side? Because I really don't.
What is he bringing? What is he bringing that's going to inspire? I mean, getting back, picking up on Dave's point, you're right. This was three games. We had 20 games to go before Coventry, and I'd broken it down into 5 lots of 4 games where we had to get 7 points, and it went 2-1-1, 2 wins, 1 draw, 1 defeat. Now we've started our first batch of 4. We started our first batch of 4 with a draw and a defeat, yeah? And now to maintain what I thought was going to be enough to get to 73 points, whether that would secure 6th, we got to win the next 2, which means beating Blackburn, who are massively inconsistent, and then going to Oxford, his former club, now managed by Gary Rowett, and they're right up there at the top of the Form League as well. As somebody else has said, 3 of the next 4 games are at home, because it goes Blackburn, correct me if I'm wrong, Blackburn, Oxford away, Swansea at home, Middlesbrough at home. Yeah, we've got to do the sort of run against the decent sides that you've both said we weren't tested against. We got to get 10 points out of the next 12, because that would put us on 48 points, right? With, where are we now? With 14 games remaining. You know, well, look at it another way. We've now got to win 10 out of 18. Yeah. Prior to Coventry in this game, it was 10 out of 20. That didn't sound too bad. We've won so far 9 out of 28.
I think a deeper value here is that right now, none of the teams are exactly pulling up trees. You know, it's like nobody wants to really grab that 5th or 6th. And you look at it, and West Brom have changed manager. Blackburn had that great run of form, but are showing frailties. It is there for somebody to take it. The question is it going to be us? Because all it takes.
Well, or QPR are the form team at the moment, aren't they?
And you know, we saw what happened at Christmas. It only takes 10 from 12, and all of a sudden you go up a bit. And for all the frustration of the last few games, you beat Blackburn, you're within touching distance of Blackburn all of a sudden, and feeling of how are we here? And sometimes football and where you are in the league doesn't match, and right to the playoffs. And my question is, how? And is that going to catch up with us at some point? It's hard to say.
Yeah. I mean, I have to say how close we are to the playoffs. I'm looking at the table now, and look, we're in the mix. We look as though we're in a group of 6 clubs chasing 5th or 6th. But let's get realistic about this. Borough, they're on 44 points with a goal difference so superior to us that makes that worth another point. So we are 7 points behind Borough, right? And right here, right now, we're 4 points behind Blackburn. Yeah, Blackburn, it is make or break on Saturday against that team, but I just can't see us right now putting together against the better sides, as Dave said, a run of 3 wins out of 4, 10 points out of 12. Let's just wrap up on the game before we talk about the transfer window, lack of activity. Bell hit the bar. I think we've talked about that. Mehmeti miscontrol when it was a 4-against-2 situation. That summed us up. Then he made those 2 subs very late on when Sykes and McCrory went off for Tanner and Roberts. Dave, Fevs, what did you think of those subs? Necessary or holding out for the point? What was the rationale there? Didn't add anything.
I think there was probably a little bit of, you know, the 2 players who've played in those, Sykes and McCrory, haven't played tons and tons of football. McCrory's obviously had his issues with getting overloaded, hasn't he? So I imagine that whilst we were on top and pushing for that equaliser, there was probably, I'm going to leave them on a little bit longer, and then we got the goal, and it was like, right, okay, let's take what we've got. That's how it felt to me. Could you have played them another 6 or 7 minutes, or however many the long injury time was? Probably, but it kind of settled our kind of attacking ambitions at that point, didn't it?
Yeah, because that was after Dave T. That was after Mehmeti. I mean, he should have done better there, shouldn't he? That was a miscontrol when he had 8.
First of all, on the wing backs, I would love to know what Manning was looking at on that pitch to go, you know what, this is the moment to make these 2 subs. I can understand if you know, I don't know how fit Sykes was. I get it doing him, because if he's gone, if he's got nothing in the tank. And there was a bit of suggestion that he was tiring, but he was effective. I get it for one. But to do both, the perception is terrible, because sometimes you've got to smell it. And I was watching that game yesterday when we equalised, thinking, there's a 3rd goal here. This is on. They've gone. This game is winnable right now. Yeah. Manning's response in that moment, and maybe this is why I can never be a football manager, is got to protect the injuries, got to think about the minutes. I don't get that. You go for it in that moment, and make a more attractive sub to send a message. You know, it's just frustrating.
You're better off trying to earn 2 points today than trying to earn
Yeah.
2 points on Saturday. Manning always talks, doesn't he, about, oh yeah, I don't have too much of an eye on what's coming up. He's always the focus on this game. But the evidence of what happens during the 90 minutes is anything but.
No, exactly. It's always planning ahead. It's a lie. I don't get those two subs, and watching the game, doing that in that moment just sucked the life out of me, because it was just a message: we have what we hold, and it's just, or we hold what we have even, and it was really annoying for me, and the wrong subs, and it just spoke of someone that is playing a different game to what he's seeing on the pitch, and I just didn't agree with the two wing backs at all.
Okay, so we've got, what is it, a week and a bit, 2 weeks left of the transfer window, as near as damn, or 10 days. Yeah. They've talked yesterday of Fally Maulu bid from Stoke. That got any legs, do you think?
It might have some legs in terms of getting £2.5 million. I think Ian Gay's been spinning it big time, hasn't he? Somewhere.
Well, I haven't had any
Dave.
communication with Ian since.
There is no way in this world that Fally Maulu is going to Stoke for £2.5 million. He might go there on loan. No. He might go there for a low fee, but he ain't going for £2.5 million.
No. I seem to recall Ian saying a few months ago, and I haven't chastised him on this, that they were going to go for 3 or 4 times what we paid for them.
Yeah. I imagine.
I mean, you know, he's on another planet. Never mind another continent.
It feels very much like someone's trying to get some news out there to try and drum up business. And I say that's not to say Stoke aren't interested, but they won't be interested at £2.5 million. You know, why would you sign a bloke for potentially more than he cost in, having, in inverted commas, failed here? You wouldn't do, would you? It's absolute cloud cuckoo land.
There was a comment from a Stoke fan of like wanting to see new signings, but why would we sign a guy that's not even in contention in this division? It's not like you're taking a mini punt from someone below. You're trying to sign a striker that has shown you nothing in this division. If it was true, £2.5 million, maybe Fally will be something in the future. Maybe, we often hear there is a player there, but the here and now, you take that money and you sign another striker. There's not even a question.
But that's it, Dave, isn't it? Darm's just said on there, there's always a gamble signing a player from a foreign source. Some never settle. This isn't a settlement issue for Fally. We've signed a bloke that doesn't fit the way we're playing.
No,
there's a player in there. He just doesn't fit. And the less you play him, the less chance he's got of fitting. But even then, I think he's on a hide into nothing like he was against Wolves. You start him in a game against Premier League teams, you've signed a player who can't work the press. It's a failure. The whole recruitment collective. Would it surprise me if he went back to somewhere in Europe and has a decent career? No, it wouldn't at all, because I think he's got some ability, but he ain't going to fit in a way that Liam Manning isolates a one-man striker.
So what? And again, Dave, that begs the question. Dave Fevs and Dave Tovey, we get back to the recruitment, right? And Liam Manning has said himself, he has the final sign-off on players. So if you look at, you've talked about Maulu, we've talked about Armstrong, Twine, I'll say our four
David, what?
Star signings weren't on the pitch at the end of the game.
I'll give you a scenario. Imagine that I'm the city manager, okay? And somebody comes to me and says, right, we've got 2 options for you. You can sign Dave Fevs or you can sign David Potier. They're your striking options. I have the final say. What does it mean?
Well, I think the final say means, well, actually, I don't want. But I'd rather go with
this
what
is
I've
claiming
got.
The issue, though. This is this final say thing, which is a load of horseshit, really, because we know that the recruitment process, and I've actually, 2.5 years ago, a small group of us were actually involved with the club in recruitment for a short period of time. Didn't last very long, maybe that says a lot, but we know what the process is. And it's a very, very collective, joined up process all the way through, from Manning and Tinian agreeing the brief of the player, who they want and why they want him and how it's going to fit in. It goes off to, Sean Gillespie's department to go and use his database and his, scouting reports to try and fit players to that. It also allows anyone within that collective to input their own players into it. Hence why you get people like Liam Manning putting Scott Twine into what I call the sausage machine. And
Mabuday.
And
what
what
a
you
success
do all
that
the way
was.
through is they'll be having regular updates about, what these players are doing. And at some point, they'll sit there in a room and saying, right, is this the player we go for? Yes, it is. They've already made the decision whether they're going for it. It's not a Liam Manning ultimate decision. He might turn around at the end of the day and say, actually, I don't want them now because, something's changed. That person we thought they were going to replace is in good form now, so we don't need him anymore, in which case you put him on the back burner. But people saying it's Liam Manning's choice is absolute rubbish. That's just really trying to pin the blame. And I'm certainly not an apologist for Liam Manning, as you all know. That is just trying to make him the scapegoat for an overall collective of people not doing a very good job over the summer with certain players.
Right.
That's fact, I'm afraid.
All right. What did you make of Manning's comment after, or it might have been before the commentary game, that he was looking for clarity?
I would imagine that's him in his roundabout way saying, shit, I've used all the budget. I'd like some more and I've asked for it. And they're probably not letting me have any more. That's how I see it. Or move someone on before you've got a free up budget to do it.
And when you say the they, because if it's a collective decision, he's part of the they.
He's basically going in there and lobbying for some more money in that collective, and they're turning around saying, no, there ain't any, Liam.
Which, as a manager,
sell someone, which is good, which to me is exactly, once again, not an apologist for Brian Tinian either, is exactly what the technical director should be doing.
Exactly. Your job is to ask for money to improve the squad, and the response might be, well, we gave you it. These are the two you've got. Improve them. But the reality is, right now we are 4 points off the playoffs with Wells. That the way I see Wells in the last couple of games, he's not being quite as sharp, and you can see that he needs more help there. It's what we're missing, and part of me thinks, are we creating enough chances to bring in a striker? But I think that we do actually need a striker, because if you bring someone in as a threat, that threat by default creates space for other people. It has to be the right kind of striker, because the way Manning plays as a striker, my goodness, you get isolated and it's a lonely time in parts of the
game. I think when the playoff dream evaporates in Manning's eyes, and he will obviously want to finish higher in the league than last season, and that will be his priority, and then he can say it's progress. But I would just like to see, and some of the youngsters, there's not that many, we're talking about Morrison, but then beyond that, there's nobody really knocking on the door, I would say. But I would like to see some experimentation with different formations over the last 10 games of the season, because, the way we're playing, getting back to
David, one point. What you've just said, that is never going to happen under Manning, to the point that if it did, I'd be like, this is not the guy for the job. This is a guy with a set way and certain beliefs. He's got flexibility within it, but I do not see him as a guy going, oh, I'm going to do this formation this week. I'm going to try this. He might do a little bit here and there, but
not risking his career, Dave, is he?
No.
So what we're really saying is, and I need to wrap it up now because I've got work, you've got a meeting as well, Dave, and what have you. But what we're really saying is, we'll muddle on as we are. Yeah, we've got players we could put out 2 different 11s because we have got a strength in depth now when everybody's fit. But it's a strength in depth of mediocrity where we've got too many average players rather than a few stars with some youngsters coming through. And look, we're all going to be watching us against Blackburn on Saturday, and a win and the clouds would have cleared temporarily. Everybody who's listened today,
squad building in easy. Let's not kid ourselves that in playing Football Manager, is it? It's difficult to do it because you never know, when a player is going to drop off in form that you kind of pinned your hopes was going to, carry you throughout the season, and you get exposed. But what he has got, as you say, he's got a depth of options, and I think that's mainly the reason why we're in contention. If he was running with a thin squad on a lower budget, we'd probably have dropped off by now. But he's given us the ability to stay in touch. What we don't have then is the difference makers to go and then kick us on, to give us that push in the last however many games of the season it is left. Now, some people might say, well, why don't we go out and buy that? Well, we could do. Yeah, let's do that if that's what we truly believe. But I believe there's probably a view in there that says, even if we do that based on recruitment, there's no guarantees that we'll actually get that player. And
No.
therefore, why will we bother? So stick with what you've got, coach them on the grass, make them better players, and do it that way.
Well,
the funny thing is, there is a depth of, there are options all over the side, and yet most of them aren't suited to this formation, and because they didn't recruit to it. And it has a strong 11, but as soon as you try to move pieces around, you have issues, because I see people say, "Oh, we need a bit more like bulk in the middle. Bring Williams in." Well, that's great, but for who? For how? Under this formation, so you're changing it. He doesn't like that, because he's seen the 3. He's seen what he's got from it, and it's like, this is going to work. I'm going to go with the 3, and for him to go back to the 4. That's what he recruited for. It should be easy, but he doesn't seem to want to go back to the 4 because of those Christmas results.
As I said, I'd love to be a fly on the wall with some of those meetings that the powers that be, the triumvirate of Tini and him and John have. Oh, to be a fly on the wall in those meetings. As I was about to say, Dave, thanks for your contribution today. Almost 300 of you were logged into this at some point. You're not all listening, watching at the same time. This will be uploaded to Spotify. Those of you that are listening on that will know that. We'll be reviewing Blackburn at home, the return of Andy Vyman to Ashton Gate. Whether he starts remains to be seen. Will he score? Probably. We'll be reviewing that game at 9 o'clock on Sunday morning. So everybody today, have a good rest of the week, and we'll see you all soon. All the best. Bye-bye.